Very official, yes, she is very official. All right, we'll get started. I will call the meeting to order because our chair and vice chair are not here. So we'll do a roll call. Jason Ruggles is not here. Andrew Renkley. Here. Kevin Repchek is not here. Terry Johnson.
Yes.
Marty Basic. Here. Elaine Vincent.
Here.
Ryan Crater.
Here.
Aaron Risden.
Here.
Thomas Province. Here. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Citizens' comments, seeing none. We'll move on. I'm sorry, I missed it. Missed number one. I went to number two right away. Meeting minutes. See, I'm a rookie. What can I say? Did everybody get the minutes I sent out the other day? Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Okay.
Okay,
Second that.
okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right. Chairperson's report, since the chairperson's not here, we'll move on. So, for those new members, that Aaron and Ryan, we are responsible for 3 defined benefit pension plans and 1 other post-employment benefit plan. There's a lot that goes into it outside of just the money that's held, which we'll be discussing tonight. So there's a lot of other things that go on with it, and we'll discuss those when the time's right for some of those other aspects. I'd updated the board that potentially at this meeting, we would have our actuarial reports. I have 2 of the 3. I'm waiting on the 3rd. I'll then deliver that to the commission and the financial management report so you guys can see that as well. So that as soon as that's done, I was hoping it was going to be for this meeting, but it hasn't. The 3rd one has not come in yet. I'm waiting on the firefighter plan, which is the smaller of the 3. You would think it would be, but it's not. So I'm waiting on that one. But one of the big aspects is our pension investments. And so back in 2015, we switched to a model of an OCIO model or discretionary management model, in which PFM, who the representative here tonight is Perry Giovanelli, who's been with us now for 10 years. Yeah, I think it's been the 10-year mark here. So
I haven't aged a bit. So.
Yeah, nope, haven't aged a bit. Yep, I haven't lost any hair either. So
Anymore.
Whoa. Okay, no.
You're sitting close.
I know, right? Yeah, that's all right. So they have full discretion within our plan as a co-fiduciary as well, which has really benefited the plan, really the administrative hassle that it was. Our old consultant model that we had really has benefited. We went to an RFP back at that time for this board members heard this last year. But for you guys, for this year, we went through an entire RFP process to deliver that in 2015. The Pension Investment Advisory Board, which was prior to our consolidation of boards, reaffirmed to state.
Abbreviation time, RFP, request for proposal.
That's correct. Yes. Sorry, I'm an acronym guy, so please stop me if I do have another one of those. Yeah. So 3 years ago, the Pension Investment Advisory Board, we were at the time that we said we were going to review and see if we wanted to do another request for proposal. They said PFM's work was great, satisfactory, no need to go through that process again, and we re-upped and we've done that as well. So we're at the 10-year mark. We'll revisit it in a couple of years. We'll probably ask this board at that same time. With our pension subcommittee, if we think that's something that we need to do in a couple of years, because we do make sure that our professional services are adequate for what we need to get done. So without further ado, I'll have Perry go into our pension plans and how they're invested at a high level. We do have the pension subcommittee that we'll meet which is Tom Province and Kevin Repchek. Who, if you guys are, Aaron, I didn't check your background yet. I didn't have time, but if you'd like to be on the pension subcommittee, please feel free. We meet at 9 a.m. on a day that works for us. It's not a set time for when these pension reports come out. So after tonight's meeting, you may or may not want to be on it. So we'll go over that tonight. We'll let Perry do his presentation to us. If you have any questions after that, feel free to ask tonight or after the meeting. Perry, take it away.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is I'll start on page 1.1. This report is through March 31st, 2025. Obviously, at the end of that quarter, April and May brought a lot of flurry of volatile activity. So I'll also try to bring you up to where we're at that point, what we're doing, where we're going through. But most of the information here is based off of the end of the first quarter. So with this first page on 1.1, just overall, the equity markets from a domestic equity standpoint were pretty much negative across the board. The only positive area was actually the Russell 1000 value, which would be your large cap Russell value or large cap value area. That came in at a 2.14 for the quarter. But you can see the Russell 3000, which is what we utilize in your benchmark, was a negative 4.72 for the quarter. Now, for the first time in a while, when we saw markets slide, we actually had diversification truly work. And what I mean by that is the last 4 or 5 times that markets have slid, it's been across the board, domestic equity, international equity, and fixed income, all going negative pretty much at the same time. So the phrasing of there was nowhere to hide was, kind of prevalent. But this time around, the diversification really truly worked out and helped the portfolio. As you can see under international equity, we used the third benchmark down. That's the Morgan Stanley All Country World ex-US. And that was actually a positive for the quarter at 5.23% for the quarter. And then fixed income, the ag came in at a positive 2.78. So that was, so overall, when we get to the portfolio, you'll see it's not a big positive number, but you actually were able to maintain positive returns for the first quarter. What we saw go on is a couple things. So if we go back to the fourth quarter of 2024, projections out and on page 1.2, the bottom chart in 1.2 there in the bottom right corner is the GDP growth chart. And it just, what it does is the light blue are the actual numbers that came in for our gross domestic product production. And then the dark blue numbers are the projections going forward. So in the fourth quarter, going into the fourth quarter, I should say, the projections going into 2025 were numbers that were over 2%. Anytime we have GDP, 2% or above, it's at least what I would call a decent type of production from that standpoint. Our economy is so large that 2% is still a nice number. Obviously we like to see 3, 4, 5, 6 all the time, but you don't get that either, right? But with that, everything was being projected by the markets to be a year where we would see GDP over 2%. Tariffs is the biggest issue. It changed all that. That's what's caused a lot of the volatility in the markets recently. So what it's done from an economic standpoint, as you can see, going into this quarter, we're already changing projections, and it's not just us. This is the whole market projection. But you can see right now GDP is projected to be basically under 2% for the year, and very possibly, getting a little closer to negative quarters. There is definitely that potential. It's like I said, it's all based off of those areas because right now, at least, from a quarter end, unemployment's still sitting at a good number. It's at 4.2%. It's been, below 5% now for over 3 years. The federal government looks at a 5% unemployment rate as actually being fully employed. They look at that last 5% typically as being either skills don't match up with the jobs that are open or they're truly just not looking. Okay, so anytime we're below 5%, that's a great unemployment number. And the idea that we've been, actually it was down to 3.7 for a while. So that low of a number for over 3 years has been really good. The interesting piece of what has happened over the last few years is the Fed actually was able to walk a tightrope. And what I mean by that is they increased rates to slow down inflation. Typically, historically, when that happens, by the time the Fed gets around to adjusting rates, we're well into a recession. Okay. This time around, they started making adjustments in September of last year. And we basically we avoided a recession. Over the last 3 years, everybody kept saying recession, soft landing, all these types of things. We had 1 negative quarter of GDP growth over that time frame. Typically 2 to 3 quarters in a row is a definition of a recession of negative quarters. Okay, so we didn't get there. So quite impressive. It's the first time really that I can remember that the Fed was able to walk the tightrope that well. With all the tariff issues, what the issue is if these tariffs go in across the board, okay, so we raise them, the other country raises them. All it's going to do is raise costs, which is raising inflation, right? Ultimately, ends up in our pockets. Is who ends up paying for it from the long time frame of it. But with that, the concern is if the Fed tries to adjust rates to address that issue, odds are it won't work as well as it did this most recent time because this is almost more artificial pushing on the inflation. Okay, so that's what the markets don't like right now, and that's why it's been so volatile. We saw April drop significantly. And then we get to the end of April, and actually really Monday was kind of the news that really made the market really take off on Monday, which was that the negotiations between China and the US came out to be on Monday. They agreed to basically only have 10% for the next 90 days. But this is how fickle the markets are, right? They go crazy on Monday positive, which is all great. What happens in 90 days if our negotiations aren't any closer to an actual real deal? Most likely we'll see a lot more volatility in the negative spot. Assuming that it's the same type of approach where, you know, I guess, you know, if the negotiations aren't going well, you know, current administration might be more in the mode of, okay, we'll raise them more then again. And there'll be pressure of 30, 20, 30% raising, right? So that could cause more fluctuation in the markets. So there's two things that we're always looking at. Where's the economy and where are the markets? And this is where people get, like, you know, I think confused or, you know, I guess a little bit, the markets will react really quickly. They will do what they've done over the last 6 to 8 weeks, but the economy does not react as quick. All right. So if this starts driving the economy into negative numbers and unemployment starts to go up, the worst case scenario could be a situation of high inflation, high interest rates, and high unemployment. You know, that's definite harsh recession. You know, like we could see ourselves looking like the late 70s, basically. You know, throw in an oil crisis and we'll be getting gas on even and odd days on your license plate. You know, like that's kind of where we could be. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is the negotiations work out pretty much across the board. And although there'll be increases in tariffs, they're not necessarily across the board. So then, you know, and you saw that in the news in April. If you saw that, they would talk about, okay, this went up for this country, but then it comes back and goes, well, it's not going to be on electricity and it's not going to be on steel. So then, okay, so where does that land, right? And if it's that type of tariff increase, then basically the economy will absorb it, you know, fairly okay. I'm not saying it won't be bumpy, but it won't be kind of, okay, now we're going negative. Unemployment's going up as we go, right? Because corporations will get ahead of it. And why, you know, it's been very volatile is the last time the corporations didn't want to forecast was during COVID, okay? Prior to that, I can't remember the last time it happened, right? So companies were coming out this quarter and saying, yeah, we really don't want to forecast right now. Because they don't want to be on the hook for like, oh, well, you said this and that didn't happen, right? So they're kind of like, we don't know, no one knows. That's kind of the volatility and the approach we're in from the market standpoint. All right. So with that, we're watching more closely, where's this GDP going to go and how much is unemployment going to increase? Because the hard part about unemployment too is it lags. So there appears to be announcements of layoffs, but you know, the people don't always go right to the unemployment office. So those numbers, it could take another quarter or two before we even see where we're at. If we go, you know, quickly into the fives, that's concerning. But at the same time, if the tariffs work out, although the economy might have slowed down, it'll take a little longer, but the markets will definitely react in a positive. They'll get ahead of the economy, the way to put it. Kind of like you just saw these past few days. Yeah. So with that,
Yeah, I mean, for my own, my day job as a buyer, and seeing various price increases and everybody's trying to figure out what it's gonna be, but I'm seeing that, so I don't know how much of that uncertainty going forward of, yes, my costs are going up, I don't know exactly by how much and for how long. So I don't know how much that also goes into your calculations there.
that goes into it tremendously. That's where all the uncertainty is. You know, it's where is the actual effect? You know, and will, like I said, will it be across the board or will it be more specific? You know, because like I said, if it's more specific in certain areas, overall the economy will absorb that. I'm not saying there won't be some industries that will be like, why do we get stuck with this? But you know, it will be able to be absorbed more. You know? And it's interesting. There's a lot of nuances to this that you look at. And one of the things with China really is they truly abuse the intellectual properties. You know, that would be something I would, to me, if the US could get them to agree to, you know, adhering to more of that, that might be the bigger win, you know, overall, because corporations are getting burned every time they take their technology somewhere, you know, well, anywhere near China. But the other surrounding this is, you know, China will have ways around this too. If you raise their tariffs too high, they'll just have their products assembled in another country.
They're already moving stuff to the other.
You know, so there'll be ways around it. So, and that's what will create more uncertainty, unfortunately, because then it will become a chess game, right? Okay, well, if you move it to Vietnam, now we'll make it on Vietnam, then if you move it to India, we'll make it.
Point to that, that's why we put tariffs on Mexico.
Right.
After COVID, China moved about 15 to 20% of their operations, everything tariffed to Mexico, to paid up to Mexican government to put HO in Mexico on the stamps, because it comes in duty free. So the underlying tension with Mexico is, look, you know, these are Chinese factories, label them as such so we can tariff them.
Right. So, and yeah, so that's the issue. Like, so it's like a big chess game we're playing. So really, you know, it was good to see that they're at the table. I'm glad they at least came to some type of agreement, but I think this 90-day thing is just more volatility. Everybody should expect more volatility. In your own personal accounts, don't look, just don't look at them. Yeah, like, it'll just make you nauseous, so don't look at it, you know. I'd like to not look at it sometimes, but it's kind of what I do. So with that, but the other page on 1.2, the other thing I do want to point out, and this is where you can see the fluctuation too, is the chart in the top right corner here on page 1.2, or 1.3, I'm sorry. This measures the manufacturing and service production in the US. So the 50 line across is basically when we're below 50, we're in retraction. When we're above 50, we're showing growth in these areas. Yellow is service, blue is manufacturing. Over the last couple of years, manufacturing did what we expected when we did see some slowing. We didn't have to have negative quarters for manufacturing to cut back. But it started to show, like as what I was describing to you at the end of 2024, it was going up in the right direction. It was just got over 50, but now unfortunately it kind of looks like it's going the other direction. And that's based off of all the stress right now over tariffs. And actually service kind of came down because, you know, they were consistently above 50 and they're looking like they're heading below 50. So this is all that pressure. So hopefully over the next 12 months, it kind of cleans itself up and it hasn't slowed the economy down to a point where we're working our way through a recession. But with that, that's kind of the gloom and doom side of things from that standpoint. Overall, though, let me just flip to page 1.8. And this is kind of just kind of summarizing the conversation I just had with you is that basically these are the areas over the next 6 to 12 months that we look at. We kind of give you a feel of what we're thinking with these areas. So monetary policy, we're somewhat neutral there. And the reason being is the Fed had, you know, kind of indicated that they would most likely do another four cuts in 2025. It's somewhat backed off of that, and it's definitely the second half of the year now is what the Fed's indicating, because they're waiting for tariffs to settle down and see where it goes. Because the last thing they want to do is keep cutting and have to try to start raising it back up to try to, you know, counteract inflation.
Right.
But at the same time, they're watching economic numbers, and if we can see growth or stalling of growth, they'd like to cut back to help stimulate it. So they're sitting there kind of wringing their hands too, without a doubt, you know. Plus, everything that they make their decisions on is data that comes in that they have to wait for. So there's no, you know, like they're going to make their decisions as the data comes in. So they're sitting there. So, you know, where we were feeling much better about them at the end of last year, you know, we're feeling kind of more neutral. It's not really the Fed that we're looking at. We just know that the strains that they're in and what they're watching. They're watching really what everybody else is watching, and they can't make a move till they see what's coming through with it. But if things go forward the way we believe, they'll probably make at least 2 cuts by the end of the year. Which once again, like I said, that will probably help kind of keep walking that tightrope of not falling into a recession and helping yourself plan on. Economic growth, kind of the same thing. We pulled off of definitely to a much more positive there to more of a neutral area, and it's all around what we talked about. The biggest issue really has been for several years now. It's been is political risk, and this is geopolitical risk, and really kind of add our government into it right now too, because of all the tariff stuff that kind of adds to it. But, you know, just, you know, what, a week ago, India and Pakistan start to go at it. So we could have 3 wars going on, you know, and that's disruption to supply chains. Okay? And to give you a feel, COVID's disruptions to the supply chains will probably take really a decade to truly work through. So we're about halfway through. And we have 3, you know, we could potentially have 3 wars now going on that are disrupting supply chain. Yeah. So that's kind of that geopolitical, that global world. Because that's the other thing with tariffs is at the end of the day, we're now a global economy. You know, when you think about it, Coca-Cola is, you know, around the world. And so we're just, you know, they have their headquarters here, right? But I mean, reality, they're depending on global sales. McDonald's, so many companies are, right? Absolutely all of them. So, you know, like we're a global economy, it's a unique thing. The big issue is though, that we're the big driver of it. You gotta, like, if you sit back and just give it a thought, the US has the largest middle class and actually the largest middle class as far as with actual buying power. You know, you go to other countries, they have their middle class section, but they don't really have the buying power that we have. So we drive a lot of the global economy because we're still buying. You know, so it's kind of interesting, as much conflict as you see, at the end of the day, China and the US kind of need each other. You know, if the US isn't buying China's products, you know, they're struggling, you know, from that standpoint. So it's a, I wouldn't call it symbiotic. It's somewhat necessary, I guess. Page 1.1 just kind of finalizes. So what does that mean from our summarizing is, unfortunately, we're sitting very neutral, which means we're hugging the targets of your investment policy. I'm sorry, 1.10, yes. So you can see right down the middle pretty much, we are pretty much neutral across the board. So from your investment policy, the targets in there, we're hugging them, and we're going to stay very tight to them. I believe, really, from everything we're indicating for at least the next 6 to 12 months, depending, unless all these tariff things come to like boom, okay, we're good, we have the results, and we know where we're going. Then we can make, I would call that the catalyst that would allow us to make a decision on, do we want to overweight domestic equity? Do we, want to underweight it? You know, and the same thing with international, you know, or fixed income for that matter, because fixed income finally had a really good quarter. It has like been the diversification buffer that we look for, which is, you know, reducing risk and being consistent. We haven't really had that out of fixed income over the last 5 years, really over the last decade. You know, so this, probably longer, really, I think back to about 2012. It's the last time I can remember seeing.
22 was the worst. Right?
Yeah, 22 was the
We
worst.
counted on it to.
Exactly, and there was just nothing there. So,
Yeah.
because like 22 would be a great example. Yeah, the equity markets were double-digit negative, but typically when that happens, fixed income gives you 3 or 4 +%, and you're looking and saying, okay, at least 35% of my portfolio was positive. This time, I think fixed income that year too was also double-digit.
It was double digit, yeah.
Yeah,
It was double digit.
It was, 22 was a miserable year.
Yeah.
But anyway, with that being said,
So can I ask a question?
sure,
Can I ask a question? Andrew, can I ask questions?
yes.
So what's the takeaway from this slide? That you're gonna be wider in your,
No, we're gonna be right on top of your targets.
well, I understand top of your targets, but does that mean you're going to be across more markets to reduce the risk in any particular market?
No, what it means is like your target for equity exposure domestically is 42%. Okay, so it means we're gonna be right on top of that. Right now, within that, like small cap is 5%, so we're gonna be right on top of that target. So that's what it means. Like every target you have within your investment policy, we're pretty much staying right on. We don't see an area where there's an advantage to trying to protect, like trying to back off because we might, we can like de-risk it and do better, or a catalyst right now that allows us to say we could add risk by increasing some exposure there. There's just, it's like a wait and see process.
Terry, I think to Terry's question, I think more is our investment policy already diversifying what he's asking?
Yes. Yeah, your policy in general is very diversified. Yes.
So those targets are already diversified across spread markets so that you're not then overweighting in one to leverage and depleting another area, so to speak. So it's already doing what you think you're asking is there, it's already baked into the IPS, into the investment policy statement. And then they're staying on top of those because right now they don't see leveraging either way.
So from where I come, being on top of it, I don't know what that means.
Okay, we're staying right on the target.
So our target for that diversification is X%.
We're just waiting.
Yeah, so like each one of the targets in the investment policy have a range that we can go on either side. Okay, so right now we're staying right on that target.
I made a career out of asking stupid questions.
No, well, like here, I'll give you a great example. From say 2012 to 2021, fixed income was pretty much giving you nothing, okay? And equities were doing well. So we were overweighted in equities, especially domestic equities. So, and the overweight wasn't tremendous. It was like a 3% overweight, right? So if your target for overall domestic equity was 42, we were at 45. International was 23, we were like 24.5. But that overall total, 4.5% overweight really helped the portfolio in that timeframe, over that timeframe. Because fixed income was, at best, on any given year, would give you 2 if you were lucky. So that's what we were doing. So like what we're
Thank you,
saying
Kurt.
right now is we're right there. We just, there's no reason to go overweight. But also, like, if we underweighted and the market takes off like it did this week, you're sitting there going, why'd you de-risk right now? And that's kind of where we're at, because we know the volatility is going to be like this. And the one thing about your portfolio, when you think about it, it's a pension plan. This is the long term. So as painful as it is to watch it bounce around, you can't get really tied up into one day, 1 week, 1 year, even 3 years. You can't get too out of whack with it. You're more on that 5 and 10 year number. And we're on
Your point about our target for equity is right now,
42%.
right, so it means that 58%,
Which is good.
is bonds, it's cash, it's.
And international equity.
You have other equity there, yeah.
So
So I'm sorry, the total equity is 65, 42 to domestic, 23 to
Internet.
international. So, but yes, to the point, then, so everything's right on target.
And I'm playing it.
We're just going to stay in that range. So, with that, page 2.1. Performance unbound. So like I said, the quarter is not necessarily that it was exciting, but the important thing is that it was positive. For as much negative you saw in the domestic equity, for the quarter, the police plan had a positive gain of 12 basis points versus the benchmark at 9 basis points. The employee plan was a positive 26 basis points versus the benchmark at 9, and the firefighters came in at 17 basis points. And your OPEB trust came in at 10 basis points. So that's the only one that's slightly underperformed the benchmark for the quarter. As I said, you can get into a lot of the other numbers. I think important numbers to look at is since inception, going back to 2003. We're at 7.27 versus 6.97 on the police plan. Why is that important? Staying above 7% is important for your MMO, which is what basically the actuary comes out and says this is the number you have to have funding your portfolio to keep your plan at a funding status and to help increase your funding status as opposed to decreasing it. So right now, all your plans, are sitting over that 7% range. And that's the allocation. The allocation is designed and projected to perform at around 7% over time. Our job is to find a way to add more to it. So that's where we're at. So like I said, on an inception long-term time frame, all the numbers are sitting in good shape. The column right to the left of that is when we changed over from non-discretionary to discretionary. And you can see we're pretty much right on target there from the standpoint of how we fare against the benchmark. It's actually even with it right now. 7.37 is where we're at. And then, like I said, when you look at that time frame, the importance once again is staying above that 7% range.
These are all net of all fees, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, not net of our fee.
Not net of your fee,
Yeah,
okay.
but net of all the other fees.
Okay.
All managers in there, it's net of all other managers in here. Okay. So,
But they don't double dip, so they have their own mutual funds. And so they don't double dip. We haven't paid fees for a couple of years because they take it out of what's already in the mutual fund fee, so they don't double dip. So this is there's not much else to take out of that number.
yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Kind of skimmed it down.
So you take the trailers, apply that to be in charge if there's a difference.
Basically, when you design a mutual fund, there's administrative cost and then there's the cost that the investment advisor gets paid. The part that we get paid, we credit back to you,
Got it.
which basically creates a situation
Which
where.
goes against the management. Got it.
So then basically you have almost no management fee.
These really are net of, I mean, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I guess,
These
when
are
you think of
net
it that
of
way,
fees.
it is net of fees then at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't want to describe it as us making a
No, I
calculation, it's
understand.
more,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, so.
Yeah.
So with that, all the volatility we've had, right? So this is where you're at as of Monday. The police plan, on March 31st was 78,794,000. It's at 81,100,000.
We still on?
Yeah, we're still on that page, just the far left column is the actual market value. So I'm just kind of giving you just a feel for how crazy volatile that is. If I would have been talking to you on April 25th, it would have probably have been 75 million, 76 million, something like that. It would have been down 2 or 3 million easily, okay? So that's how crazy April was. You
You
know,
say
as of Monday night,
it was,
it was 81,100,000.
In the last 2 days held it, so.
Yeah, Monday was incredible. That Friday was actually good too. Monday was really.
I think it's good.
I set an alarm for when I should shut up, but I'm already past it, so I apologize.
That's not surprised.
So with that, the other plan is similar,
I yield part of my commissioner time. Jerry.
so,
Yeah, it's
but-
funny, when the markets are acting up, suddenly your presentation's a lot more interesting.
I mean, numbers are all over the place,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it, you know, but anyway, so the employee plan, you were at like 36,547,000 on March 31st. And, you know, as of Monday, it's 37,179,000. Firefighter plan, 21,462,000, as of Monday, it's 21,796,000, so that plan didn't quite see as much. And then the OPEB is up about $100,000 from the number that you have on March 31st. But that's just to give you a feel of, like I said, the volatility. All of those numbers, like I said, around April 25th would have been down. Yeah, big time. Yeah, actually, back to my point about not looking on that day, you know, but anyway. So with that, just going into your portfolio, well, I don't want to drag through the police plan too much. I want to get to the targets that will help, like there's a page in here that will help kind of spell that out a little bit. So page 3.7, let me just touch on a couple of things there.
Favorite, this is his favorite one.
Yeah, I do like this page. Because it gives you the hard dollars, and what I mean by that is, so for the quarter, that, you know, it's only like a 9 basis or 12 basis point gain, right? So what did that mean on the quarter? The third column over, the return on investment, hard dollar, that was a $97,000 gain, okay? But the 1 year number, when you look at that, that's a number, what your 1 year was 5.22. And what did that mean to you? That meant a hard dollar gain of $4 million, $4,043,000 on your plan. So over, you know, so from March 31st to March 31st of 24 to 25, you know, a $4 million gain. You know, your net flows were a negative $2 million, and that's basically all your retirement payments going out. And
Why was it so low for the quarter?
for the book, because you only had a 12 basis point gain.
No, I'm looking at the
No,
net
net
flows.
flows.
Oh,
I was
net
looking at
flows.
too.
Oh, because Andrew probably put money in, right? So the
We
contribution.
put $1 million in January, we put $1 million in April. Then we float the remainder of the MMO that he mentioned in July.
Got it. So the 1 year numbers are the better. Well, no, because,
Yeah,
but it doesn't reflect our contribution.
yeah, it does.
It does.
Well, no, but I mean, it's combined, so that you don't
Well,
have
it
the.
factors out the January of 24 million and he puts in the January of 25 million. So that's a good number.
So anyway, so that's how those numbers play out. But the page I want to go to is 3.8 to give you an idea of what we mean by targets and where we're at on allocation. So the bottom box, the light blue is the target allocation, the dark blue is the actual allocation. So domestic equity, for instance, on March 31st, it looks like we're a little low there at 36.8 versus the benchmark at 39. That was actually a little loss through the first quarter. Okay, what we did do is we took more of a defensive approach and we didn't rebalance. We waited out April and didn't add any equity to it. You know, didn't catch it back up to the exact target. We were really in a wait and see mode, trying to be very cautious. But most likely if I ran this port as of Monday, that would be rated 39 or a little bit above because it's kind of regained where it was lost at, you know, at this point. International equity, you see pretty much right on target. The target's 21, we're at 21.9. And then fixed income target is 28, we're at 30.5. And then we have a small allocation to private equity, private debt, and real assets, and they're pretty much all right on target. As you can see, 3.3, we're at 3.5, 3.3, we're at 3.6. And the real assets were just slightly underweighted, 2.3 to 3.3. And that's distributions have actually been coming out of that. That's what's slowing that down. You know, so dividend payments is the better way to put it, coming out. So with that, that's what I mean about like, we're staying pretty much right around those targets of the allocation. In your investment policy. That's it. That's all I have for you. If you have any other questions.
So a question for Andrew. Where the rubber would meet the road, to me, would seem to be, you've got a population of police officers whom over time are going to retire, would be looking at this sort of stuff. And then there was, reference to some 7% thing where you're looking at, that's what you need to sustain.
That's
It
correct.
seemed to me that number would vary based on what your population looks like, as opposed to just one certain solid number.
Well, the discount rate is then factored into, that's called the discount rate. It's the 7%. When you hear me talk about the discount rate, that's our target number pension wise. So that's factored into all the other things that the actuary looks at, like demographics of the plan, right? What's your age right now? What's the expected lifetime?
So that number
Mortality
would,
tables.
so that number probably will change over time.
We decide if it changes. It has changed over time. In the 12 years I've been here, we're at 7.5 when I got hired, and now we're at 7%. We're becoming more conservative. We're putting more money in. If you went higher to that discount rate, you'd be much more aggressive. Saying, hey, I expect Perry to, be wearing every Rolex under the sun because he's making so much money. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. But we've become more conservative over time. That generally comes when you're getting closer to being 100% funded, which we are. We're getting closer on the police plan. We're in the 90%, which is a lot of plans are unheard of for a police plan. We're a large municipality pension plan wise across the state. To be solo like we are and the way we do it. So it's commended to all those that have come before me and the work we've put in since I've been here. This has been a plan of a long-term plan to get there. So to your point, the 7% discount rate then gets factored into all those other things that I mentioned to then give us, hey, projecting based on the demographics of your police plan and what your salaries have been, your projected increases, all those things, then comes out and they spit out a number that says, okay, to remain at this level, to be projecting funding, because the model in the state of Pennsylvania is to get to 100 and stay at 100. Never be over it, never be under it, always wants to get you to 100. So if in a couple of our plans, fire and general employees, we're over 100% funded. They bring you back. They don't let you sit on it. They want you to bring it back so that it evens out, so it's always at 100%. So that being said, that's how it all comes to play. That's where the 7% is a large projection of that, because if we miss the mark, we pay for it over time to pay it back, to get it back into the plan. If we overshoot the mark, which is great, right? And we do that, we then get overfunded, then it brings us back. So we get a credit in future years to bring it back. That's how it all.
And I think I may have asked this question before. So I come from a world in DC where if you do well, you don't spend all your money, someone's gonna come in and swoop it up. So in this world, the county, the state can't come in and say, you're too overfunded, we're just gonna yank that away from you.
There's nothing stopping the commission from funding their pension plans however they see fit, as long as it meets the MMO. Right,
I'm talking about some outside of.
correct, that's correct. But to your point, no, because they're protected in a trust fund, right? We can't touch it as a municipality, nor can anybody else outside of it touch it. But also, we just have certain state rules that we have to abide by. And once we abide by those, we can also fund additionally as we see fit, which we do.
Perry, the outflow of 2 million, I'm assuming, do you harvest that from all the different investments or do you?
Yeah, because we're balancing back, like,
Okay.
when we're pulling out money, we're watching the targets.
Okay.
And we tend to, for a plan your size, we tend to try to keep around 2% cash. So that we can make payments for over a couple months before we touch cash again.
It's usually a 6 month.
Yeah, like I would say,
Flows.
Try to keep it 6 months.
try to keep, yeah, so that way we're not like.
Right.
In there just to.
Well, especially too, if we're throwing in 2 million in the first 2 quarters, there's 2 million in cash right there that you can just turn around for.
Well, that most likely got invested. I would say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would say for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, we let our guy Tyler know at PFM. He knows it's coming. He knows what to do with it.
Well,
It's
and
on
I'll
his
give you-
first rodeo with us.
A lot of plans wait till the end of the year, because that's when they get their MMO contribution from the state, okay? And Andrew, what Andrew does is actually much better for the plan. By doing it throughout the year, it's just like your typical, your dollar cost averaging a year in your own 401k plan. And a great example is the money that went in April went up, exponentially quickly, right? And that will over time be beneficial. There'll be a time where you throw it in and it goes down. I mean, but basically, by not waiting to the end of the year, it's beneficial. And then also from an actuary standpoint, the actuary, when they calculated as if your contribution you're putting in for 2025 was in January. So if you think about their calculating, like the whole thing should go into January and you haven't put anything in yet, so you're kind of already a little bit behind. But for the plan that waits till October, you're 9 months behind.
So you guys are a maverick is what you're really saying.
Everybody else does it this
I
way.
remember that
I-
from last year.
Yeah, this is the only plan that I have doing it. I have several plans been trying to encourage them to do it, but actually I take that back. One has started because I encouraged them. And the unique thing is they're the exact opposite of Mount Lebanon as far as they're not in good financial shape. They are struggling, but they're finding a way to make that contribution, every quarter as opposed to not.
Yeah.
So that's off to what they're trying to accomplish there. And, their funding status is in the low 80s, so it's painful for them at every step of the way. So anyway, go ahead.
Another acronym question, MMO?
The minimum municipal contribution, or I forgot. that.
Obligation.
Obligation, yeah, that's it. So, and that's driven off of everything in the state, actually. That's what they will contribute a piece to that, right?
Yeah, state pension aid, that's correct.
Yeah, the state pension aid will give a piece to that. And that's why most municipalities wait, because they wait for that to come in, which comes in like September, October.
Thank you.
So they just got into I guess like a habit, and this is how everyone does it. And what they don't realize, what they're kind of doing is, they're not helping themselves, especially because, probably more so because of the way the actuary calculates. Because every 2 years when they run that affects your funding status, and that affects, okay, how much do we have to come up with? Because the state's only giving us this. And if the MMO, if the MMO is $1 million and the state's giving us 200,000, we're kind of up with 8, right? And so that's kind of the pressure that starts to increase on this. And believe me, I have been involved in RFP processes with plans that are significantly underfunded, where I've kept my fingers crossed that I don't win it, because it is a nightmare. Yeah, it really, really is a nightmare when they're below 80%, it's scary.
I'm gonna give credit for commission. It was Andrew's suggestion, but thank you to my fellow commissioners for voting yes with me
Yeah.
to do this, because there are some that say, hold the money till the end. And thank you to commission for saying, no, this is something that overall will be better for the plan.
It's an
It
increment.
requires some discipline to say, eat your vegetables, and commission.
Yeah, no, you're right. But it's an incremental positive over time. So I really am done.
You are done.
Very good.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Barry.
All right, I actually should leave, or you guys will have more to do.
Yeah, we have more to do, so you're more than welcome to stay as
That's
a member of the public.
He was my subcommittee.
That
That was my subcommittee notes
Subcommittee
right there.
report, done.
I'm running Perry.
Done.
Well, Blaine.
All right, commission liaison report. Item
Let's
5.
see, we came up with the number for the bond. It's gonna be $750,000. Commissioner agreed with Andrew.
Wow, that's a really low bond.
Say.
Oh, hell, that's, why not? You can't-
750 grand.
You talk this down to a low number. No, it was 750 was the magic number.
7.5 million.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. Big difference.
Yeah, whatever Andrew said. We just said, what do you want, Andrew? And we said, fine, 7.5 million.
I missed you guys.
You're gonna take all the loose change out of this.
I'll give you the tuition bills I have.
So anyway, so 7.5 million for the bond.
Is that what you're gonna say about the bond?
Well, no, if you got more to.
I would like to add something. So,
Go for it.
so Terry, to your point, I want to make sure that the things that we were just talking about, this discount rate, all the things that we throw into that soup bowl that we're talking about, it's a numbered item in the rating call that we just had for the bond issue. There are prime things that they talk about: real estate assessed value, economy, pension, OPEBs, surpluses, and sewer. But pension and OPEB are and they look at ours and they move on. They go, okay, you good, moving on. There's a lot that they focus on that a lot more than they would with us. The things they focus on with us is that we're fully built out. You're talking to a rating agency that's in New York that's not familiar maybe with Mount Lebanon, but and we can explain those, hey, we're 99% built out, but this is how we roll, right? And we may not meet, but pension is important. And the way we pay attention to it benefits us
Right.
hugely when we go to a.
That was my expectation, was if you're good there, when it comes time to go out and request money or a bond issue, you're looking good, so you get better rates.
That's correct. Yeah. So I just wanted to reiterate that all these things that we talk about here and we pay attention to that other people are looking at and that, yeah, it may be glossy-eyed at certain points where this is new and, you know, understand, but as we move through further through time, it really allows good questions to be asked, to make sure we're put in the right position and we rely on our awesome residents, and I don't mean to shine you on, but you know, it's been good questions over time that have gotten us to this point 20 years later, that since inception with the PFM model that we had back in '03, we're in a much better place than we were prior to that. You know, but it's been a long game. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, that part of this is educating, so please. Let's approve the bid for the Woodland Drive sidewalk work last night, and I will not even try and throw a number out because I'll mess that one up too. Last,
Do you want that number?
yes,
459,000, I want to say.
I'm teeing it up for you.
Something, maybe it might be a little bit more.
And commission voted to, for those residents that did not sign agreements to share the cost, we voted to oppose for those residents. At this point, it's 3 households that have not signed agreements yet. They still have time if they so choose to sign the agreements. We can still hope until we get to the point where we have a cutoff, but again, most of the residents have agreed to that plan, the 90%, 10% plan. What else? We also discussed a number of bids from Gateway last night. Most overall, it's below estimates for the budget. Most of the actual specific bids were below the target. These are things like the tennis courts converting over to courts 1 and 2 to pickleball, and the related cost of that. There's also an HVAC unit at the public safety building, some facade work, that sort of thing. But the good news again of going through all those bids and going, the cost, except for some electrical work, were basically lower than expected. So that was appreciated. So I'm trying to think any other financial highlights since we met last, but those are kind of some big ticket items.
That should be through the general bid cycle, the large bids, we should be pretty closed out. So we have all of our large recurring contracts. These are our large kind of individual contracts that are budgeted. So numbers came in good, came in well, and we should be adequately positioned and leveraged through our bond issue to complete these projects and be ready and set up for any South Garage work as we move forward. So things are shaping up the way we intended them to.
Same with the street reconstruction and resurfacing again, that the bids came in as expected, and so that's covered as well. So yeah, so it's very steady going forward.
Yep.
A side question on that, do we have any deadline on when they're gonna quit making the stripes in all the streets? Like, I know you guys give the permits out. We have like, okay, all the plumbing is finally done.
When you say the stripes on the street, you mean?
Well, you know, all the stuff that they've ripped out to redo all the water lines and all the sewage lines that Alcoasand's been doing for years.
Yeah,
What portion of, was there a plan that Mount Lebanon had that said, you know, here's the deadline? Because I know we issued a permit, so what streets they can work on. Do we know they're gonna be done doing that?
Utilities have their own rules. It's, you know, it's very frustrating where we try and meet at the beginning of the season, so what are you gonna work on? What's your plan for these streets? We're thinking we do such, okay, fine, we're gonna do
So they don't
that
give you
street.
guys a master plan.
Oh geez, we've had streets where literally did the whole street reconstruction, the next year they dig it up. Like, really? You know, we could have waited a year.
They're doing it right now. You
That's-
guys resurfaced it last year.
Yes.
They're doing it.
You know, now they have to resurface it curb to curb, that's the deal, but it's sort of dumb going, you could have waited. And so we try and coordinate as best we can, but it's their baby. And if
Well, I just
they,
wasn't sure with the Alcoasand, because that was a larger plan countywide. I didn't know if they came in and said, okay, because they had a plan when you saw when they did it, they identified all the streets. I just didn't know if Mount Lebanon said, okay, here's all the plots you're ripping up. What's your game plan? When's it gonna be done?
they ask us to say a street opening permit, but again, as utility, we're.
I don't know Alcoasand plan specifically.
Yeah, well, they were the driving force between all the streets getting ripped up. About a decade ago.
But I mean, I think you may be thinking about some of the Alcoasand, turning over water lines and so forth. I'm talking about any utility going, it's
I'm
gas.
talking about,
it's
I'm talking about the
it's-
water line specifically.
No, but I mean, it just, whichever happened to be, it's.
So specifically, no, we don't have control.
But they don't tell you, okay.
They don't, but our Public Works Department does a great job of being in communication with all of those managers. And evidence is one right near me is Anawanda. What did you call them last time? Rooster Tails? You called the strips something.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah,
The strike,
so like,
yeah.
they may not be able to do the restoration, but our Public Works Department has enough communication to say, you need to go get in there, patch it, so that we're good for the rest of the summer till you can get to it. So, yes, it sucks, but yes, they're all on top of that, and it is something that is high on the priority list of our Public Works Department.
No, I just wanted to ask that before I make that the last
Well,
one.
that's, I mean, you
Was there a
just-
master plan when they came out with this?
No.
They're taking out the water
No.
lines.
And you'll get things to Andrew's point of going, listen, look, get something decent to get us through the winter and then come back the next spring and do the street right.
Yeah.
But it's, it's.
They've tried large coordination meetings, they've worked sometimes they
I was
haven't.
gonna say.
Emergency stuff happens, like Cedar Boulevard was a good example. They just ruptured. See ya. Like, we gotta go do this. And
So, that's good, that's good. Thank you for two new members, one online, one's here. So thank you.
One more interjection. Did you guys see the report that the city of Pasadena had about burying their electrical lines? It was like the first honest report. Nobody saw this. They had to do a report like this for city of Pasadena. They're gonna bury all their power lines because of the fires. And their actual report said it would take 500 years.
500 years?
Yeah, yeah, it was like a big thing that came out, like they actually admitted, nope, well, all the bureaucracy, all the headaches, it'll take 500 years to bury all the power lines in Pasadena. So I just think, and like the problems around with the water lines, I think we're ahead of the curve.
Well, look, I
Yeah.
can't speak to California politics. I saw an article talking about
you
a.
can, but.
It was basically a connection between Los Angeles and San Francisco.
On a train, yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, and trying to eminent domain and then a whole mess and whatever else kind of thing. Zoning Commission has talked about the idea of trying to look for opportunities to bury power lines. The utilities aren't thrilled about it.
No.
There's also a situation of going, finding a street that's got enough being torn up, long enough length to make it worthwhile to say, yes, we're tearing up this much road, it's not worth putting a power line down. But something like over on Fernwood, where, okay, enough of the street was being torn up, was that long enough that we could explore? So it's something the commission asks about. So like, as I said, utilities aren't supportive. Some it is, the idea is like, based on number of street segments being replaced, if we said automatically everyone, it would still take quite some time just because we're not digging up every street all the time.
Yeah, there was a PA rep that put out a report about 3 weeks ago that said that PA costs about 1.2 million a mile.
Yeah.
By their estimates. We all know that's not their estimate, but.
But I mean, it adds, no question, adds cost to the project.
Yeah.
That's. It's,
Somebody from Duquesne Light told me they don't want to bury them because first 10 years, great. But when there start to be maintenance issues, they're really hard to find the problems. So they like them up above on a pole, unfortunately. So, yeah, there's
You make bendy poles.
the one on, I have one on my street.
Does it bend?
interesting thought. Anyway, so any other questions about what's up?
So I guess, will there be, I mean, you talked about insurance things, right? Is there a financial impact from the storm last week that you're anticipating, or is it more of an insurance claim or?
It's insurance.
Okay.
No, not from that storm, no.
Yeah.
We had a few municipal trees go down, and there was a few, but nothing of major significance.
And like I said, in a meeting that we had today, been here for 30 years, gone through a lot of storms. Everything that they've done with the storm water funds has so far done so much good. We used to flood down at Cedar at the bottom down here. We flooded the one time down at the Gilkison Corner, and that we're not having that kind of thing. And these storms are as bad as the storms we were getting. So it's proving.
In 2018, my quote since I was president that year, we're going using the rainy day fund for the rainy day projects. Because we said it was about $500,000 that we pulled out of, give me a number. But the point is, we pulled out of
Put the
unassigned,
spreadsheet up, but
but the point is, we pulled out of unassigned funds and said, we have all these projects, we need to address this. We had a 100-year storm followed by the 100-year storm. We had to address it, so commission made the decision to address a lot of those projects. And yes, we talked about that last night, where we've made a lot of progress, and hopefully we're getting ahead of some of that curve.
I think largely, being that I'm the one who passed the claim, I know how much they've gone down.
The fact that Terry's cheering up over the progress we've made.
You know, it's, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
goodness. The other fleet management, you reminded us that we postponed that again because one of the two people who was supposed to make the presentation was sick. I said, all right, push it to another meeting. So it's still on the to-do list. But literally, we were gonna talk about it last night, like Eric said. Next meeting, whatever will be next on the discussion session. So anyways, so any other questions? What's going on?
in total over 3 years, it was 1.3 million
Okay. 1.3.
that we used of general fund dollars.
Accelerate the sewer.
So make sure we get it fixed, ice spots, flooding areas, making sure we fix it. So,
Yeah.
so those known issues we could do right then, let's roll, let's go.
Yes, they're, identified projects.
That was important to the commission and rightfully so, and they did it. So, you know, kudos to them to do that.
I mean, you look at a situation like at my work, Woodhaven down to Fort Glen. And Longview did not have any catch basins. The water would run down Longview to Woodhaven, go through Woodhaven, down to Forest Glen, flood Forest Glen. And so that was a significant project. Fortunately, it was done in a trip, but it was.
Yeah, it started all the way back in 14.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That took some time.
finishing those projects.
So I want to make sure there's time to do the summary of board activities, because we have to turn in our homework.
You do need to turn in your homework.
Yeah.
Staff liaison report, we'll move on to that, and then, so that's me. So Terry has been working hard, and kudos to her. We have a insurance RFP coming to the commission. We are going to see a significant increase in our insurance premiums, but we knew that was coming. With our rink claims, we knew that was coming. And it's going to be large. You pay for it in the end, at some point when you have a large over $1 million claim, when your generators go, or your compressors go down and things to fix. So it's going to be large. We're getting the finalized numbers now. We'll have that report to the commission early next week for voting at the May 27th meeting for that. We've been busy with the bond issue, wrapping that up. We will be passing the ordinance on May 27th as well. So it'll be a big night for finance. And we'll have the bond sale projected for Thursday. Bond market looks good. We had a sale today of a comparable municipality, and it was about 20 basis points less than what they were projecting for us based on the markets where they were.
What
So
rate do you think we're gonna come in at?
say again?
What rate are you looking at?
We'll see. I'm not gonna predict, I let the bond underwriter tell me about that, but I think we're in good shape. We're in good shape and layering it in the way that we talked about with commission, layering it into a 15-year to make sure we have available capacity for the next couple of years when we're going out. We should be in good space. So those are two big things we're working on in the finance department. All right, so old business, item 7 is the annual summary of board activities. So I had sent that out, and at least, I think Kevin at least looked at it. I can tell that you looked at
I
it.
tried to type on it and I couldn't.
Okay, it wouldn't let you, so maybe I have the share settings wrong. Just really what I want to do tonight is just, gotta go through the subcommittees, make sure we getting highlight bullet points. Not that there's been a lot of movement on them. I know we're learning what this board is going to be. So once we do that, I can quickly type it up and then we'll be able to submit it to Keith for his thing. So, pension investments, we'll start there. We'll just, summarize that we've scheduled quarterly meetings. Anything other?
Keep Perry up on international stock exposure.
Yes.
Carry up on
Still not listening to me.
Perry up on
Yeah.
everything, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
But
no,
Perry
we did ask Perry a lot of, what we thought were intelligent questions, or at least ones that made us look like we kind of almost knew what we were doing. But no, I mean, the one thing I would say that's been interesting, that it's been almost a year, I guess, is that In a way, what Mount Lebanon does is a bit frustrating because you guys are so disciplined that it's not like, a half dozen or a dozen people from the community can come in and question, hey, why are you doing this? I mean, it's.
No
Yeah,
fun at all.
Yeah, and I've been really kind of disappointed. There's, nothing to, in fact, people ask me when they say, I said, it's been a pleasant surprise. I said, this place, forget the school district, but this, the municipality runs their finances extremely well and extremely disciplined and, kudos. I mean, but unfortunately, it means that there's less activity for us to put
We
down.
start doing theme parties, Terry. Brighten the place up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
You had name tags for a while.
How about a scandal? I mean, that would be good too, I mean, just.
Scandal. Tell somebody's retired.
Yeah.
I want scandal. Too much young and the restless for that.
It's the early days, the pension investment advisory board, where we actually did say, what about this, what about that? So
Yeah.
I was like, they do this every day.
Yeah.
We're looking at this quarterly, why not let them do it, and then they can react more timely to our wonderful suggestions, so.
Well, I mean, when you started the pension committee by saying, oh, our plans are 100% funded, you're like, oh, all right. So that's kind of a biggie that, isn't even on the table. And then, if you're looking for a 7% target, asset allocation is pretty standard and what they're doing is, with the exception of too much international, is good. And, but I'll never win that. So.
And the lack of other tools, there's other instruments they can use. That are
Right,
efficient.
right. But it's
That's
fine because when you're targeting 7, it's going to get you 7.
Yeah.
So.
All right, fleet electrification.
I'm sorry, I'm still just like, you complain about overlooking at 150 million in pension funds and going, it's working great, and you're upset.
We don't like the drama.
Yeah.
No drama.
No
Don't want drama. So fleet of electrification, how do we want to summarize that?
Yeah, I'd say we've put together some initial analysis of life cycle costs, working with Greg from, your office to try to get some more information for his presentation for you guys for the next information session and have him, provide a whole, comprehensive plan to the commission as far as, fleet electrification. So I think we're working on what there's the life cycle cost of, if we go down that route.
Okay, and then our other third subcommittee was trash hauling. Do we have any updates there? Moving on there.
The last we did was your presentation on all the trucks.
And to be honest, if we're gonna ever do this, and this is where the commission needs to come into play, and I know you're gone in December, right? Do you really want us to do this? Is it truly taking it in-house or is it looking at other options?
And I think, and yes, I.
Other options of a contractual arrangement, so bin costs, all the things we have from how it would look and all those things. So there's a lot that can go into trash hauling outside of, there's a time pressure if you're really serious wants to look at in-house trash collection. Right. That Mount Lebanon employees do it. Commissioner Flynn has talked about specifically a regional effort because really us doing it at that level. So does this subcommittee really need to be looking at a regionalization plan? I don't know that necessarily this committee, if that's what it's designed to do, my opinion. Or are there other options like, costing out something like, automated collection, bin stuff, all those different types of things. Because when that comes to play, there was a significant increase in all those things, and we've had trash committees before. And there's gonna be an education process, because I sat on that pay-as-you-throw committee, and, that gives me shivers. Of all those things, that we need to bring those things back up, get us up to speed to where we're at today and how we got here, and that, so giving that commission direction.
Right, and look, I'm gonna miss this thing. I mean, I've got 11 and a half years in. Yes, my term ends at the end of the year. And it's been fun and I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. It's time for someone else. So I'm trying to work to affect that transition. And so I think, as you mentioned, Commissioner Flynn, to say really, as he's been kind of the advocate, it may make sense to have either subcommittee meeting with him or however we look at this. I think generically, it would be good for the subcommittee to just kind of be, not to go through the torture of pay as you throw again, but the idea be aware so that residents have some, this committee has some idea, say, all right, here are the bids, and you've got some context, to say, well, good, bad, whatever, and we're not sort of starting from scratch. So even if it becomes just a education aspect, so that when, a couple years down the road, and we're gonna have to evaluate trash contracts, we're kind of better educated consumers on this thing. But as far as, I would have to defer to Commissioner Flynn to say, okay, this is gonna be going on past December 31st. What, and I'm gonna assume he's gonna be sitting in this chair, at the reorg, I don't know which committee he's.
He's not sitting on this board. What are you talking about?
No one's gonna be sitting on
It ain't
it.
gonna be him.
It won't be me,
He
so.
loves mobility. Come on.
It's someone, not me, is gonna be sitting here. And so the question is to say, back to commission direction to say, because it's going to be a time commitment.
Well, I think what I'm requesting, and I don't mean to speak for the rest of you on the board, but we need direction.
Yes.
Because it's a time crunch now. Like, we gotta be at the 3-year mark going, hey, are we going regional? If we're even gonna approach that. Because there's a whole litany that needs to go into that. If we're not interested in that, there's other things that we can look at in the trash hauling space.
Right.
That probably needs some analysis and needs to bring in, and we can look at past bids and those types of things and projecting and saying what may make the most sense. Because I think one of the things that caught us off guard was what a hauler coming to us for just us. And that was who you have now, which is County Hauling. They basically specified their manual collection, which we are considered manual collection for our contract. They wanted us because we were benefit rich, right? And that we would want that within our community. Well, does the commission want us to explore those other things and what that cost impact would be? Because we know we have a number for 28. We have a number for 28 for automated collection, what it would have been.
And I think in part of this summary of board activities is exactly that question. Because it's gonna go right back to commission to say, here are the reports from each of the boards. Is it something that, we're asked to make a decision on, or something coming back saying, seeing direction or needing direction?
All right, so
So I think it's that exactly clear to say, help.
Okay.
So
I'll phrase it that way, is
Yeah.
that, the discussion has gone to the point where we've heard from other commissioners and we need clear direction as to, okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Is that okay with the board? Cool. All right.
Well, I agree, if it's gonna be up for rebid in 3 years, you don't wanna do the numbers then, you wanna do it now.
Yeah, well, and
What
we gotta
numbers
be
do you want?
prepared. We gotta be prepared.
There's no benefit for like going to St. Clair or Dormont and saying, hey, let's go for a bid for the whole, for the region
We
instead.
did,
That was
we
just-
already
yeah.
Oh, we
do.
did that. Okay.
Yes, we're already part of a 18 municipality contract for this. But it's more the structure within the contract. So the contract gives you, and that's where maybe I need to, if I haven't, I apologize, but give you the bid contract to say, you can see all the different options.
Yeah.
Right, 96 gallon toters to 64 gallon toters, automated collection, once a week, twice a week, recycling collection. There's all litany of things within there that you can pick and choose. And every municipality has the option to then also bid into that contract as a collective. Also, we can also talk about bidding it ourselves. We don't have to be part of that bid, right? I don't know if that's advantageous for us. I don't know that answer. It's a lot of work, but so those are questions we need to ask and get more direction as to where, because we don't want to be up against again, where, hey, we could have done something different, but now we're 9 months away and haven't thought about it. So I'll do some phraseology on that within there, disseminate to you guys tomorrow or Friday, and then we can turn over to the manager on early next week.
That's good. And then also, just as it makes sense to matter how, I assume commission is gonna say, do something. But is it worth having kind of trash 101 class? Particularly some folks who are new to the board, but just to give enough background where Kevin was asking the question going, even we're not to a decision point yet, that's part of why we talk about with Perry or budget time, whatever. So the board has a sense of how this all goes together. And, you know, we want to educate the group so that when it comes to, you know, even if it's a subcommittee, the entire group is gonna have some thoughts too. And have a sense of how this all goes together. How much minutia, you know, to present, and Andrew could probably give the trash speech for 4 hours. He doesn't want to, and you all don't want to hear it.
Excuse me, let me start.
Move to adjourn. And I can't even vote. But you know, back to, is because with all these boards, we're starting from zero. And so I feel it's very important to educate this group. So, you know, you are better at consuming the data and offering suggestions and ideas back to us, even if we don't always agree with, like, investing international funds or something.
It's the percentage, but.
All right, we'll deliver that back to, and I'll make sure to highlight, hey, we need commission direction here.
Sure.
Commission direction would be appreciated in this area, these
Yes.
areas.
Exactly.
But I think a deeper dive, Brett, I mean, I think the issue is, I think, aren't we anticipating that this didn't go over really big when suddenly people got garbage fees for the first time?
Right.
And if next contract, the fees are twice what they are now, you know, that ain't gonna go big.
It's not gonna go over big when you don't have a choice. And I think what the first initial fee implementation was, how do we at some point give you choice?
And look, the last time around, I mean, we had two choices, even with Shay Cog and the big bid, whatever. And it was the other guys, I want 50, I'm great on the numbers tonight. So if I say 55-gallon drum, feel free to correct. You know, one drum. And that's it. I'm like, we have seniors that can't drag that big a container to the curb because they get 2 36s. Nope, one. And oh, by the way, that's more expensive than the other one. What? So you can put 15 bags out and it's cheaper than this one 55-gallon, whatever. So I get back to having just more people in the room educated about some of the choices, whatever, and it's back to, it's fees, it's not, it's whatever. That's one reason why this board was created, to get more people aware and throw out questions. You know, the five of us don't know everything. The five of us aren't, you know, I mean, technically we're the end all because we vote on it, but my point is to say, instead of gathering.
It'll be good to get you I had Terry make a note. We'll do a trash kind of dive and we'll do it over segments.
Yeah.
And maybe we look at this last contract and say, okay, what questions do you have about the contract? Why did we pick this? Do we not pick
Can we
that?
call it a dumpster dive? That would be great.
Yes.
I just thought we.
I wish I
trash,
thought
which
of
feels
that.
so much.
Myself.
And that'll have to be an agenda, on the agenda.
Yes,
Dumpster dive.
dumpster dive.
Yeah.
Yes, because we're the cool sport out. So, all right, we'll do that. Okay, thank you. Mhm. Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Um,
All those in favor? All right.
next meeting. is
Aaron, we'll see
scheduled-
you next time.
Yep, see you in person in Mount Lebanon next month.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks,
next
everybody.
meeting Is June 11th.
Yes.
That I will highly likely not be here because I have tickets for US Open practice round that day. Yeah, so I can't even say like, I got another commission related meeting. No, I got a birthday gift from my wife and there you are. So,
I'm going on Friday.
oh, cool.
All right.
It's fun.